Hi there. Are you ready to relax and fall asleep? Let me tell you a little story to help you drift off peacefully. The palace slept beneath a soft, heavy veil of incense and moonlight. Beyond the grand jade gates, where the silence seemed to weigh more than gold itself, Emperor Wen of Chen sat alone before a beautifully painted screen. His robe, a deep and regal crimson, pooled around him on the floor like a silent, resting tide. The candlelight flickered and danced, casting trembling shadows on his face. A face that was proud, deeply weary, and profoundly human. Tonight marked the 7th day since the court had insisted he take the Empress. The entire court had rejoiced. Ministers and officials had bowed in what they saw as relief for the empire's future. Yet, amidst the celebration, one man had not smiled, the very man now standing quietly behind him, dressed in simple, plain silk, his eyes as calm and unreadable as the surface of a still lake. "Your Majesty," Zicao said, his voice soft, barely disturbing the quiet air. "The night grows late." Qiàn, the emperor, turned. Even after all these years, after all the changes and titles, that voice still possessed the unique power to unravel the tight coil of tension in his chest. "Come closer," he murmured, his own voice low and filled with a private command. Zicao obeyed, moving with a silent grace. As he approached, the faint, familiar scent of orchids drifted between them. A scent that was at once comforting and almost cruel. In its familiarity, the world outside the chamber was utterly hushed. There was no wind rustling through the leaves, no sound of patrolling guards, nothing but this soft rhythmic sound of their own breathing filling the space between them. When the emperor finally lifted his eyes, the mask of the sovereign was gone. In its place was simply a man, tired of pretending, tired of the loneliness that came with his crown. A man who had missed someone for far, far too long. "You should not be here," he said, the words heavy with unspoken meaning. Zicao offered a faint, knowing smile. "Then who?" he asked gently. "Called for me." The answer was as soft as silk, yet it was enough to fracture the emperor's carefully constructed composure. He rose from his seat, the crimson robes rustling as he crossed the room. He stopped, just short of touching him, the space between them charged with years of unspoken feelings. "You know the Empress watches," he said, his voice tight. "She has eyes and ears in every corridor and every shadow of this palace." "Let her watch," Zicao whispered, his gaze unwavering. "I have lived half of my life in your shadow. Let me at least stand in your light once more." "Loesta, do you not fear the consequences? What they might do to you?" "I fear only one thing," Zicao replied, his voice steady and clear. "I fear a life where you forget me." The single candle between them burned low, its flame sputtering as the wax dwindled. The shadows on the walls swayed like gentle waves on a dark sea. When Qiàn finally reached out, his hand was hesitant, almost trembling. It brushed against Zicao's cheek. A touch so light, so tentative, it might have been a prayer. Zicao leaned into the touch, unafraid, his gaze steady and bright with a devotion that no royal decree, no dynasty, no threat could ever hope to erase. "I was told," Qiàn said, his voice barely more than a breath, a fragile confession in the dim light, that an emperor must love no one more than his empire. Zicao's reply was a soft murmur against the emperor's rest, as he gently took his hand. Then he whispered, "Let me be your empire." As if on cue, the rain began to fall outside. It started as a soft patter, then grew into a steady, silver, unending shower. The sound of it filled the chamber, wrapping them in a curtain of quiet that went beyond words. And under the gentle sound of the rain, in the flickering, dying light of the candle, the emperor's heavy crown, the symbol of all his burdens, slipped from its place, forgotten amongst the folds of silk on the floor. In that moment, there was no power left, no rank, no emperor, and no subject. There was only the simple, profound warmth of closeness, the feeling of skin against skin, and the quiet echo of two hearts that had long refused to part. The night lingered on, stretching out as if it could last for an eternity, holding them safe in its embrace. Morning arrived with the faint, clean scent of rain and rich sandalwood. From beyond the heavy silk curtains, a court lady's voice called out, soft but insistent, "Your Majesty, it is time for the morning audience. The ministers are waiting." The emperor stirred, pulled slowly from the depths of a peaceful sleep he hadn't known in years. In his arms, Zicao still slept, his face serene, as if he were completely untouched by the world's cruelties and political games. Qiàn looked down at him at the gentle curve of his dark lashes, the quiet peace on his features that no crown or throne could ever grant, and something deep within him, a knot of anxiety he had carried for years, finally eased. He gently brushed a stray strand of hair from Zicao's forehead, his touch feather-light so as not to wake him. He leaned in and whispered, his voice firm with a newfound resolve, "Let them wait." The sun finally broke through the morning mist, spilling golden light into the room, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. For the first time in a very long time, the great golden throne of the empire stood empty. That year, autumn arrived early, and with it a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Inside the sprawling palace, the very air seemed to crackle with tension. Servants whispered in corners, eunuchs exchanged glances, and every rustle of silk seemed to carry another rumor. They said the emperor no longer visited the empress. They said his nights were spent in the private hall of Zicao, where incense burned too long and laughter too soft. They said a single man now held the empire's heart, Zicao. Zicao heard the whispers. He did not answer them. Instead, he served tea at dawn, arranged scrolls in the study, and stood behind the emperor during court sessions. Silent, steady, as though carved from calm. But silence, in the palace, was the sharpest kind of defiance. One evening, the empress herself sent for him. Zicao entered the jade hall with the grace of someone who knew his place, and refused to bow to low. The empress sat before a mirror, letting her maid comb her hair. Her smile was sweet enough to poison wine. "So," she said softly, "the emperor's favorite companion finally honors my hall." Zicao's head lowered just enough. "Your Majesty overpraises me." "Overprices." The empress's laugh was brittle. "You forget. I am no fool. A ruler's heart is the pulse of his empire, and I see whose hands it beats for." He said nothing. The empress turned, eyes glinting like polished jade. "You may think your love noble, but what you cherish is a peril to the throne. Do you think the ministers will kneel to a man who shares his bed with another man?" Zicao lifted his gaze. "I do not serve their eyes. I serve His Majesty." That calmness, so unshaken, so pure, was what made her fury rise. "Then you will fall with him," she hissed. But Zicao only bowed, unflinching. "If that is my fate, I will not regret it." He left the hall as quietly as he had entered. Behind him, the empress's laughter fractured into silence. Later that night, Emperor Wen of Chen found him in the garden, beneath the lantern trees. "You saw her?" Qiàn said. It was not a question. Yes. What did she say?" "That truth is dangerous." The emperor gave a weary smile. "Then we live in danger already." He took Zicao's hand, briefly, secretly, and led him deeper into the garden. "Where the moonlight spilled like water over their shadows, the court grows restless," Qiàn murmured. "They want heirs. They want peace. They want me to forget you." "Then let them want," Zicao said. Qiàn turned to him fully now, eyes searching. "And what if they force my hand? What if they strip me of my name, my power? Then you will still be you." Zicao's voice was quiet, but firm. "And I will still choose you." The emperor stared at him, The man who had once been his attendant, his confidant, his ruin, and now his anchor. He exhaled a shaky breath. "Zicao," he said, "one day, this love will cost us everything." Zicao smiled, faint, serene, unwavering. "Then let it cost everything." At that moment, a lantern flickered somewhere beyond the walls. Footsteps faded. Too quick, too deliberate. Neither of them spoke, but Zicao. Someone had been watching. By dawn, the whispers had turned into murmurs of treason. Years later, poets would sing of the emperor who ruled with gentleness, whose eyes held both strength and sorrow. They would never know that, behind the jade screens, in a quiet courtyard of magnolias, a man named Zicao once laughed at the morning breeze. And that laughter, light and fleeting, was the truest sound of peace the empire had ever known. And if you listened closely, on nights when rain fell soft upon the tiles, you could still hear it, the faint echo of a promise, whispered beneath the golden veil. No matter crown or shadow, I belong to you. Thank you for listening. I hope this story has brought you a moment of peace.